Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Health Chats podcast. Today's guest is Morgan Blackman. Morgan is a holistic wealth coach, writer, and speaker who helps soul conscious women build wealth that aligns with their values, vision, and energetic design. Morgan brings a really unique blend to the conversation. She's a self-taught investor with over 7 years of experience, a certified trauma of money facilitator, and she's currently completing her master's in counseling psychology at Yorkville University. Her work is all about helping women heal from the fear, guilt, and limiting beliefs that often block us from financial abundance, while also giving us practical tools we need to save, invest, and build wealth with confidence. I personally am so excited to hear her perspective. I'm excited for you to hear her perspective. So let's dive straight in. Morgan, can you share your journey of what led you to becoming a holistic wealth coach?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this one is such a loaded one. So I feel like there's like two stories and like I never know which one to start with, but I guess I'll start with like the finance specific journey. So that would have been in university. I had a friend that was dating someone that was sort of starting to teach her about investing. And she would just be taking like random trips to go to the bank to see this financial advisor. And she's someone that's she's also a Black woman, became friends in like middle school, and like just very similar upbringing. I kind of was like really curious as to how she was able to get to a point where she was investing. Because for me, I always thought like investing was something where someone had to have lots of money to start with already to begin with, or they, were just born into wealth. And that wasn't her case. I know that wasn't her case. And so I was like, where are you finding all this money to do this? And she was just like, no, like, you don't really need a lot of money to start, just like a few $100s, whatever I'm saving from like, part-time work in the summers and stuff like that. I'm just putting into this investment product that my advisor's been talking to me about. And in doing that, like there's interest growing on it. And that like blew my mind that like she's already starting to have her money work for her. And that was sort of like the inspiration and the motivation to take ownership for myself and like learn how to invest. And that within that year, I believe it took about 6 months before I actually put money into the stock market. So it was like starting with just like Google, I don't think AI definitely wasn't where it is now. But yeah, just Googling different things on investing, how to start, investing for beginners. I started getting into like finance related books, which isn't something I ever did prior. I was mainly reading like a lot of fiction type of stuff. So yeah, I just broke into like this whole new world. And within 6 months, you don't have to save this much, but I wanted to save like $5,000 because I was like, okay, well, the more I put in, obviously, like the more you get back. And so within like a year of me putting in that $5,000, I was able to double that, which is a pretty significant feat because most average investors see like maybe between like 7 to 10% annual returns. So for me to like invest in my first year, choosing my own products and like to see 100% returns is pretty wild. And so that obviously gave me like a huge confident boost. I felt so empowered just as a Black woman to be able to see the significant success. And obviously, like I wanted to make sure that like it was consistent. Like this wasn't just like a one-time thing. And so after like 3 to 4 years of like continuously investing, like between 10 to 20% returns year over year, I also started paying off debt. I started building up a pretty sizable emergency fund. And I was like, yeah, I can do this. I feel like there's a lot of other women who just feel like money is something that they're just like not supposed to be good at, or like it's hard. And I wanted to empower other women to realize like, no, this actually can be very easy. Like, it comes with its barriers to entry, but like once you get to a place where you can start to save, then you can obviously move and shift into a domain where you can have it also work for you. And then like the rest is kind of history. And that's how you really truly build. That's how I kind of became the holistic wealth coach I am today. I started an Instagram account, just sharing my journey and educating women. And then eventually I realized like you could turn that into like a business and also like make a career out of it. And yeah, that's how I got to where I am.
That's amazing. Congrats too on investing and seeing 100%. Like, I'm sure that was
I did.
probably on top of already saving
Yeah, like not expected.
$5,000. Like, oh, and now you're going to double it. So I'm sure that was, like you said, that bit of a confidence boost that you're like, okay, I'm going to keep going. Because I know so much as like business ownership too and entrepreneurship, it's like you have to believe it before you see it. But then when you see it, it's like, okay, now I really believe it. And I'm going to like keep
Mhm.
going into this.
Exactly.
I'm curious how, like, your personal experiences, maybe before this, before you were able to go and like double your money in stocks, how did that affect how you used to approach money and your mindset around money and
Right.
maybe abundance in general?
Yeah. Well, I would say, I guess growing up, like, grew up in a middle income family. I guess my first money story or one part of my money story was that like my parents felt a lot about money. And so I saw money as something that brought a lot of conflict. But it was until I turned 16 and I got my first job, that was a very interesting shift and transition because it was the first time where it was like, wow, I actually have ownership over like what's coming in. And now I kind of get to decide like how I spend it. I don't have to rely on like my parents to buy me anything anymore or wait on their approval. And then I think like just going into university, obviously people going into university know that we're going into a lot of debt, most people. And then it's sort of like, so I started investing third year and it was, I think, a really important time because I knew I had like another year or so before I graduate and then I have like all this debt to pay off. So I was someone who never really was a big saver, and I think it was like until I started investing where I truly saw the importance of like wanting to save even more because it was like, well, in order to invest, I need to have money. But to back up a little bit and like how I had that mindset right before going into investing. So in university, I was kind of in like I call this like a spiritual awakening, but I was kind of in this like toxic 3 year situationship with someone. It was the first time I ever like seriously was like trying to date a guy, or I guess you could say fall in love. And yeah, I just ended like really bad. And I kind of made a vow to myself that like I never wanted to be in that situation ever again. I never wanted to put someone else above my own health first. And yeah, I thought I had loved myself and I realized I didn't. And so I kind of went on this like personal development journey of like, like what as women, like if we break up with someone, it's kind of like wanting to remind yourself of like how much of a bad bitch you are. Right. So that was like my first moment of doing that. And I started going to the gym for the first time. Yes. First membership ever was on like my university campus. And that's when I started taking like yoga classes. And then with yoga, obviously you start to get into like meditation. I kind of went down that rabbit hole of like the mind body connection, quieting the mind, finding groundedness amongst like all the noise or like the chatter in your head. And then also like diet wise, which might really interest you, I started getting like really bad acid reflux in university because I was just eating a lot of crappy food. Like the university I went to was like top university for like culinary degrees and stuff like that. So we have like a lot of restaurants on campus and yeah, I just wasn't eating healthy. And so I developed this acid reflux. And so as an experiment, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to explore like what it looks like to eat healthy for me and my body and what feels good.
As a health coach, like all of those things, it's more than just a journey of like your physical self, but your spiritual self as well. And
Mm,
so, from my understanding, and I mean my own journey too, having that kind of awakening can
yeah,
literally create rapid change in your life, taking you out of that pattern of what sounded like you were raised in a negative mindset around money. Like money wasn't good. There was always arguments happening to, oh, wow, I am in control and the creator of how I choose to spend and how I choose to save. Right. And
exactly.
like that's huge. And the fact you've made a career out of it too is just so inspiring and fascinating. So
Yeah.
I'm curious what, just looking through your websites and stuff, when you
Yeah.
say trauma of money, like what does that
Mm,
mean? And
yeah.
how is that kind of connected to having emotional blocks around how we spend, how we save?
Two ways you can approach this. So, trauma of money can actually have nothing to do with money at all. It could just be traumatic experiences itself. So, these are like severe negative circumstances or experiences that one has had in their life that has really negatively impacted their mental, emotional, and you can also argue spiritual health. And it's something that is also really stored in the body. So a lot of the times our brain, in trying to protect us from having to relive those negative moments, might overreact to something that might not actually be a threat. And that is what we kind of consider trauma, or at least the trigger, right? That comes from, that's sourced from that trauma. And so, yeah, it could just be like other experiences that you've had. For example, like a lot of people understand or know of like attachment styles. So that is some aspect of trauma, which determines how you relate to your relationships, or I would say also how you make decisions. And so, or how do you just relate to things? And so, someone that maybe has more of an anxious attachment style might also operate in that way when they're managing their finances. So I like to call this like the window of resilience. So you have on one side of it someone that's in more of like a frozen state. So some people tend to like avoid their finances. They kind of just physically shut down, don't want to deal with it. And then on the other side of that spectrum is someone who's like anxious, so very preoccupied. Maybe this is someone who's like spending impulsively. And where you want to be is like somewhere in the middle. But because of our traumas, a lot of us actually are on maybe like one side of the spectrum more than in the center and in the middle. So for me, it's like identifying what someone's money story is, the experiences that they've had, and being just self-aware as to like what those traumas are, what those triggers are, what those attachment styles are, and then incorporating certain tools and embodiment practices to bring us into this centered place where we're not making decisions out of fear or out of anxiety. Trauma of money as well could also just be you also having negative experiences specifically with money that were extremely traumatic. So people that really like homelessness, right, is a very traumatic experience. The three, at least to me, I think the three core basic needs of any human is like food, which also includes water, shelter, and like connection. And being homeless, you kind of lose all three. And you're very much in survival mode. Like imagine having to figure out like where is my next meal coming from, or like where can I seek shelter tonight so that I'm not threatened by the weather or animals or horrible human beings, right? Yeah, it's more so those were kind of like the two aspects of the trauma of money. It could be just trauma in general that affects how you relate to money, that was originated outside of money itself, but then it's also people who have had very negative, poor traumatic experiences with money itself that also feed into that.
Yeah, I love how you've explained that. And I feel like I'm soaking up so much myself too, because I wouldn't say that I have the healthiest relationship with money. I would say I have a quite strong money mindset,
Sure.
but being able to compartmentalize the two, where it's the trauma in your own life and then the experiences around money, that I don't know, that was almost like a aha moment in my brain. Maybe you've heard this in personal development in the space, but like how you do one thing, it's how you do all things. So
Exactly.
in fitness and health and wellness, in the past, my personal struggle, and now so many of my clients, what I see their struggles are, it's that all or nothing mindset. Okay, so
Mm,
like all in regards to money, like that all, it's like, you know what, I'm just going to spend frivolously, like put it on my credit card. Like, I
mhm.
don't care. It's just like maybe going to make me happy. I'll just buy the next thing, buy the next thing. Or it's like, I'm going to hold my money so tightly to me because if I spend it, oh, I could end up in this scary situation or something. Finding
Yeah.
that kind of middle way,
You know,
I guess, how would you help someone? Like, say someone comes to you, that's their
yeah.
situation. They're like, you know what? I either do it all or I do nothing. How would you help someone
Right.
find that more metal grounded path?
Yeah, well, I say awareness is important at first because you need to be aware of your thoughts, your emotions, and how your body is responding in a moment where you are triggered. Because a lot of the times, like we're just running on autopilot. And so often we don't even realize that we're being triggered by something or this is a trauma response. So one would be self-awareness. Like, how do you feel when, we start to talk about budgeting and then you have to look at your money? What's your response to that? And then I can identify like where you are on that spectrum. And it could be both. It can be both avoidant and also anxious, right? Or just one or the other. And then I would say, okay, let's figure out like what type of grounding practices we can bring into your life, into your routine, into your everyday, or just with some sort of consistency so we can build healthier habits that will sustain you in moments where you are triggered and you can be aware of it and then use these tools now to bring you back into center. So on my own spiritual journey, I found what really helped me was meditation, doing some breath work, maybe to kind of just like really physically regulate the nervous system. Maybe it's going for a walk, maybe it's talking to a friend, maybe it's journaling and just writing how you feel out. If there's someone, so for example, say yeah. So, I mean, my main thing is like, you want to feel good before you make a decision around money. And that can be a little tricky because sometimes you think you feel good, but it could be like the impulsive angst part of yourself that's just like wanting to just buy this thing because it's on sale and you feel like you're never going to get it again. So let me buy it now because it's something that I would have wanted anyways, even though you don't really have the money for it. So there's some discernment that comes with that. But I think it's really just listening to your intuition and knowing like, okay, this feels good. It's in alignment with like the future version of myself, whatever goals I'm working towards. I feel more confident in making this decision. And if you don't feel that way, then how can you create an environment or how can you incorporate these embodiment practices to get you to that place before you make a decision? Because if you're going to make a decision when you're angry or frustrated or stressed, like I think people can understand this better within the dynamics of like a relationship, right? Like if you go into a conversation with your partner and you're already like pissed and just maybe not even wanting to have the conversation, you're probably not going to leave that conversation with any like positive results, right? If anything, it could actually maybe end up in a fight or a breakup. So it's like the same way that you'd want to approach your money. So for some people, they have a really hard time budgeting and looking at their money. So I say, okay, well, like, what does your environment look like? How can we set up an environment where it's almost like taking you on a date, get it ready, do things that make you feel good. Maybe it's like lighting a candle, playing some good music, using like a few tools from your toolbox. If it's maybe going for a little 5-minute walk or doing some breath work, and then kind of ease into looking at your money. And I would also say like mindset work. So I would address like limiting beliefs as well too. So what are the beliefs that you have around money? And then flip it to a more empowering belief that feels good to that person in that moment. Because I feel like so often we choose empowering beliefs or affirmation that feels so far off that like they don't really resonate to the nearest future version of yourself that you're working towards. So I would also work on like, what are these limiting beliefs? And like, let's flip the script and also have you go into this, I guess, activity with money or decision that you're about to make with money from that lens.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. This approach is very much correlated to how I work with clients. It's not about like, what are we doing? How much money are we putting into what stock? Like, it's none of that external. This I can really feel and see as the energetic approach to like, who am I when I do the thing? Because what I like to say is what you put in is what you get out. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're showing up with this anxious, like chaotic,
Exactly.
angry energy, yeah, you're going to get it done. Whatever that thing is you're trying to do, you're going to buy the thing, you're going to finish your workout,
Right.
you're going to finish your meal prep. It's going to get done. But how do you feel after the fact?
After exactly.
Right. And
Yeah.
I love that it sounds like you help people with a ton of strategies to just essentially ground themselves in who
Yeah.
they are and connect with that higher self, with that spiritual self and energetic self. So when they step into it, they're like, I can do this without feeling like I am super chaotic. So
Exactly.
I love that. Something I want to ask, maybe selfishly about, I like to say it's
No
my
worries.
podcast, so I'm allowed to be selfish.
Yeah.
And if there's someone, and that someone, that's me in this case, independent. And I know I'm not the only
Mm,
woman. I know so many women struggle with this. Maybe, yeah,
yeah.
you did too. Where does that hyper independence come from if you figured that out? And how do you help women get away from it where they think, I think I need to be able to make all the money and do all the things and saying it
Such a
doesn't
good
work that.
question. So is this like in the context of just within society being a hyper independent woman or like within a relationship? Just general. I can answer it.
Well, for me, I'm not in a relationship. So for me, it'd
Right.
be more in society.
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely hyper independence comes from it's just a lack of community and women feeling like they don't have enough support systems around them, right? I feel like we live in a very individualistic society. So it's almost sort of like an everyone's out for themselves. And it's not like people don't care about you, but it's kind of like what you said, like everyone kind of has to fend for themselves, go out there, work, make money, and then figure the rest out. And in more like interdependent societies, like in Eastern sort of regions, or eastern side of the world, you'll find there's a lot more basis on community and like leaning on your neighbors, leaning on your family and just other networks for the support system. So I think that's a big thing. Like the system that we are embedded in today, capitalist system, is very individualistic, which means like a lot of the goals that we're going after, we feel like we have to go at it on our own. And then two, just as women, like I feel like we feel like we have to do it all ourselves. I feel like sometimes we feel like because we know ourselves best, we think that we can also do it better. And we're afraid to ask for help because we don't want to burden other women that subconsciously we might feel like are also feeling the same way. Like they already feel burned out. They already have so much on their plate. Like I don't want to add to that for somebody else. But yeah, I think when it specifically comes to money, I know for myself, like I've never been someone that's like really asked anyone for money. There's like like a little bit of shame there where it's like I don't want to burden somebody else. Like it's my responsibility to go out there and work and bring in the income that I want. And that's that. Like I just don't really want to burden somebody else. And I think as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that it's okay to lean on other people if you're going through seasons where you might be having a hard time. I took a gap year like in 2022, and in taking this gap year, I couldn't really work or like I didn't want to, but I was lucky enough to have like a decent amount of a savings to support me. And in order to stretch myself and not go too much into my savings, I ended up like moving back home for a bit and like staying with family as a way to like save, you know? So that's kind of an example of like not trying to be hyper independent. I could have like pushed through and just been like, no, I'm gonna do this all by myself. But I recognize the power in like community and like asking for help or having that additional support and not feeling any shame around like, oh, I wasn't able to do this on my own or like, it's almost like, we're dating someone and it's like the guy is living in his mother's basement. You don't want to be that person or identify as that. And yeah, I kind of had to get out of my head a bit. It was like, no, it's okay. Like you can't just continuously have periods of growth. Like sometimes you need moments where you can pull back and like rest and reflect. And sometimes that requires like community and support.
Yeah.
So that's how I
I
kind of learned to embrace that a bit more.
and I appreciate hearing that because see, these are conversations that I would say I have in my friend groups, like with my
Right.
close, I have a very tight knit community, but I don't think this is spoken enough out loud to the public. And so
Yeah.
society sees, and it's funny because we're society, hi, but we like see each other as these people who have all their shit figured out. Oh, this person just bought their house, but they post that photo on Instagram, but they don't write in the caption that their mom co-signed or that their dad gave
Exactly.
them
Yeah.
50K.
That's big.
Like
Exactly.
those, and that's the truth of our generation is it's
Yeah.
very, very rare that people are achieving these large financial goals without the
Goals.
support of family,
Exactly.
of friends, of grandma, of like whoever it is that helped them get
Yeah.
there. And I love that you say that, like that hyper independence, it's likely use the word like lack of community, which I don't know if I'd entirely agree it's lack, but I think it's that society projects this idea of what we think we need to become and be. But
Looks
we
like,
we build that
yeah.
inside, and we have the people around us, but it's like that shame and guilt of wanting to ask for the help. So,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll add to that a little bit
mm,
too. Yeah, I do agree. There's like this impression that we have to be approved to be like success looks better when you've done it on your own, when you've done it by yourself, like that whole like self-made entrepreneur, and not real, like you said, not recognizing that actually a lot of people have gotten where they are because of their support system.
yeah. No, I appreciate that and I like that. And that's the real types of conversations I like to have, because again, like
Exactly.
having them all the time in my friendships and seeing people, especially of our age, like where you're I think the same age of me, 27, 28.
Girl, I'm 30. I'm getting old.
Are you? Okay, I couldn't remember what you said,
Yeah.
which still, you're young, you're like
30.
similar generations,
Yeah.
but like I don't know, our parents, like they had very different things, and I don't wanna say like it was easier for them, but life was different. It was
Right.
different back in their times when they had jobs, when they didn't have so much social media influence of like what life was supposed to look like. And so what they built versus what now our younger society is thinking we need to have and thinking we need to build, it it's so messed up to think that, we can just completely do it alone. I don't know.
It's
I think
really
that
wrong.
needs to be like shouted from the rooftops that
Yeah.
if you're listening to this and you're trying to build an entire empire, like think that you're building a Roman empire. Rome was not built in a day, but
In a day, exactly.
here you are, a little 22
One
year old,
person.
whatever. And
Yeah.
you're like, but I'm going to do it by myself. Okay, good.
It's
Probably not.
it's wild. Yeah,
It is.
yeah. It's crazy like how much harder it would take you to get to your goals. Like, for example, I have a friend who just bought a house with like two of his other brothers. And like I really rate that. That's beautiful. Instead of feeling like, no, I want to get my own thing. It's like using the connections that you already have, to have this asset. Another reason, at least for me, why I believe that I'm a bit hyper independent is also that fear of being manipulated. So sometimes, especially when it comes to money, it's like if I share too much or reveal too much, will people use that against me? Growing up, seeing the conflict that I saw in my house and stuff around money, I never wanted, specifically in dating, my hyper independence comes from not wanting a man to control me. Yeah, and like it might look different to different people, but at least for me, it's if I make my own money, if I can build love for myself, like I'm not like at the beck and call or having to be submissive to someone else because that's the source of where I make an income. So I feel like I've always been a person that's, no, it's okay. I can do it on my own. I'm going to be that baddie that's like doing all these things for herself because no man can come to me and be like, well, like I'm doing X, Y, Z for you. It's like, no, like I can do those things for myself too. And that's kind of the source where my hyper independence comes from. But even with that, like I'm learning, I mean, I don't have to gain support from just a significant other, but I also do want to get to a place where I can trust my significant other and partner to provide for me where they can, while also knowing that I can still also provide for myself. Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate that share. I can also relate to it so much too. And see, it's layers. It's layers and layers. It's not
Mhm.
just like this one thing happened and this is
No.
why you are the way you are. Like there's different pieces. And for me, when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I remember when I was in a stable relationship like 5 or 6 years ago. And then I left, and that was the scariest thing I could have ever done because I was
Right.
so codependent, and then I jumped to the other extreme of like, well, now I'm super independent and not wanting to end up in a relationship like that because I wasn't happy with who I was. That's what it came down to. Who was I when I was in that relationship? I was a different human on a
Right.
cellular level. Of
Mhm.
course, I'm going to hold on to this hyper independence of like what I've created, which is what we do. We often stay in something that might not be serving us because it's comfortable, and that scary discomfort, it might serve us more, but we don't know what it looks like. But that's part of the human
Yes.
journey. And I think like we got to give ourselves kindness and compassion through it, which sounds like you're really good at doing through those practices, meditation, yoga. So
Right.
I guess if someone is wanting to learn like more serious and like practical financial stuff, financial
Right.
health, what are a few practical steps that they could walk away with today?
So I would say definitely get clear on your goals, get clear on your why for those goals, because sort of like what we touched on earlier, a lot of people are chasing certain goals because that's what society kind of deems as like what it looks like to be successful or what it takes in order to be admired and approved by everyone else. So getting clear on like, yeah, what do I want my life to look like? What are my specific financial goals? A good example is like the six figures, right? Like I feel like a lot of people that's sort of their like that's when you know you've made it. When you've like either found a 9 to 5 job or like your business can bring in that amount of money. But a large chunk of the work that I do is actually getting women to actually see how they have the wealth that they actually would want today by really just aligning their spending with their values and realizing like you actually might not have to make six figures in order to live this happy, fulfilled, meaningful life. Right? But it's just we get so caught up with like the numbers and the highlight reel, thinking like that's what's gonna make me happy, or when I get to $1 million or 1 billion or whatever. And it's like, no, how can we find happiness in your life today? How can you find joy today and be happy with like what you already have? Not saying that you still can't work towards more, but then that's where like the clarity piece comes in. Like, why did you want that thing so bad? So like for myself, I always used to be the person that's like six figures. And like I still kind of do, but it's not six figures because I'm flexing. It's more so six figures because I know like I want to go eat out with my friends every week. That would bring me joy. I want to be able to gift people. You know, I have like 5 nieces and nephews. It's like sometimes I get a little frustrated when like their birthdays come around or like Christmas and it's, you know, everything adds up. And it's like, okay, if I had like a little bit more money, like that wouldn't have been as much of a deal. I can like really give to people in the way that I want to give. I can have more money going into my investments that will work for me in the long run. So just things like that. And when I kind of do the math and do like, I call it sort of like reverse budgeting, $10,000 a month or something around there would feel and like look good to me. But also, I've learned to build my life around maybe only making $50,000 a year and also still being content with that and happy with that as I'm working towards making it. So yeah, I get really clear. And then another practical strategy would be, I would just say like start small. I think a lot of goals that we go after when it comes to our money, whether it's paying debt or really mastering our budgeting strategy or investing, like sometimes it could just feel very overwhelming. And so I would say just like start small with things. So even with investing, you don't have to be investing large amounts of money. You can start with like $5 to feel it out. See how that feels to you. Try different investment strategies. If you lose $5, you lose $5. I guess there's not much risk there. Right. Even learning how to invest, like baby steps there. You don't have to invest overnight. Like I said, I started with just reading a few books and taking notes from that, really absorbing the information until I got to a place where I felt confident. And that takes small habits over time that's consistent, right? So whether that's like listening to one podcast a week on money or reading a book a month or spending 5, 10 minutes a day, like reading up stuff around, you know, your finances. Just start small, but be consistent. I would say that.
Yeah. No, those are great. And I love the alignment in, I mean, just coaching, frameworks of coaching. You have to have a goal.
Definitely.
You have to have a goal. If you don't have a goal, the world seems humongous and, it seems like your goal that doesn't exist is like super far away, like
Right.
thousands and thousands of miles, and you're like looking at it. But if you
Yeah.
don't even know what that goal is, what can you work towards? And then, like you said, step two is start super simple and start small, like bite-sized things to help get you there. I think not only just like financially, but with goals, a lot of people struggle in ever achieving them because they think that they have to be at the goal right away. They think,
Right.
okay, my goal in fitness, I just talked on this a few episodes ago, but my goal on fitness, it's to work out 5 days a week. okay, this week I'm going 5 days. And they go from 0 to 5. And then it lasts 1 week, maybe, if they're lucky.
Yep.
And then they stop and they're like, it's impossible to ever get there. But that's where being realistic, and this will lead
Exactly.
really well to my next question. Being realistic, it is important. You have to be realistic, smart goals. We were taught them like for a
Listen,
good,
yeah.
but in that, like being realistic, there, and I still see it a little bit now, but not as much as I used to. Tell me, you probably do. Is there's like
Mhm.
this mindset, this abundance mindset around money, where people are like, you have to live way beyond your means. You have to
Mhm.
program who yourself that you can have that life. Oh, you don't have
Right.
$1,000, put it on a credit card so you can like invest
Mm.
10,000 into a coach, into an experience, and be around these people. So there's that
Yeah.
like full opposite of realistic, which would be delusion, I think. And I've lived there. I've lived there many times. I'm
Right.
curious what your thoughts are as a professional
Yeah.
in wealth around that, like
Right.
more delusional dreamer money
Yeah, that's such a
thing.
good question. Yeah, so I know some people don't like this word, but like I'm all about balance. And
Yeah.
I know balance, it's like the word perfection. Like you can never actually have true balance or like be 100% perfect, but I think it's like aiming towards that. So I don't think there's anything wrong with being delulu in the sense that go after your vision or that best future version of yourself, whatever that looks like. Like dream big. I want people to dream big because so often a lot of us are actually playing small and we don't realize that we can actually step into this bigger life and this bigger, better version of ourselves. But a lot of fear keeps us back, doubts, insecurities. So if you are someone who's in a position where you're like, no, like I believe in myself, I'm so confident, this is what I want, like I love that. But then, like you said, there's a part of it where you do need to be a bit realistic. So I really like you bringing up the example of what spending like $1,000 on like a coach or something that you don't have like the money for. So, for example, in my own life, when I first started coaching, I hired an Instagram business coach. I would say, yeah, like 2021 is like when I fully like left my 9 to 5 job when I went full time into coaching. But a little bit before that, like I would say like 3 to 4 months before that, I hired this Instagram business coach and she was charging like 3 grand for like 3 months. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, like that's way, like way, yeah, it is way too much. It is a lot. It is a lot, but then also, is it a lot when you see the value of it and like what I can get in return? But also a part of it was like believing in myself and knowing like, okay, I'm investing in this. I've done my research on her. She's making 6 figures. Like I trust her framework. I feel like if I actually apply myself, like I will see results, at least make back my money. But if I don't, I also have a decent amount of savings where like maybe I just call it a loss, but at least it was like I was willing to bet on myself, but I was willing to bet on myself while minimizing as much risk as possible. So I think that's where like the balance comes in. Like, yes, like be mindful of the risk, but not to a point where like you never take on anything because you're just always going to the worst case scenario, but then also sometimes the best case scenario might not come exactly how you wanted it or the first time you attempt something. And so ensuring that you kind of have like a bit of a fallback plan. And so
Yeah.
having that savings, like some people, they'll say, oh, like I really want to quit my job and like I really just can't do this anymore. And it's like, okay, work towards saving before you quit. Because if you quit and you don't really have a next plan and knowing the current economic state that we're in, you don't know if another job will be promised to you within 6 months. What are you going to do to hold yourself, pay all those expenses that you have for the next 6 months? You know what I mean? So it's like the same way you would think through that, quitting a job willy nilly, the same way you would do that with making other decisions around your money and like just other investments in yourself.
I like how you answered that. And I love the word balance. People who don't like it,
Yeah.
I love it. I have
Yeah.
a scale tattooed on my arm.
Oh,
I'm a Libra. It's all about
right.
balance.
All about balance. Exactly.
And would totally agree with that. I would say I've lived more in the Delulu side personally,
Mhm.
where you just said you spent 3 grand on a coach for 3 months. I spent 10 grand on a coach for 3 months years ago. And I would say, yes, it's okay. What is the value that I'm getting
Right.
out of this. That's how I decided to make the investment. I didn't have that money. I was like, okay, credit card, we're going to do this. But
Right.
the value that came out of it, the mindset shift that I made, the discipline and the drive, like, absolutely, I see it's worth it every single
Right.
day because, yeah, money, it can be made again. I think if
Exactly.
you're always living out of that place that's like, okay, I have zero money and, I'm going to
Right.
spend 10 grand and like, oh, money will be made, but you're not putting in the work to make the money.
Exactly.
Maybe that's not really balanced and it might be a problem. But
Right.
yeah, I like kind of how you've worded that because I'm such a big dreamer and that's what I like to encourage in everyone is step
Right.
outside of that comfort. Is it ask the
Right.
question like, is this impossible or is this actually a little uncomfortable? Because if it's
Mm,
uncomfortable, there could be growth there in investing in
yeah.
yourself, in investing in a health coach and a wealth coach and a mind,
Exactly.
right? There could be some zero.
Yeah,
So yeah, I
for
really love
sure.
how you've worded all of that. And that
It's
brings me, we've almost been chatting for an hour, so I got to wrap us up here. But there's a question I really, really love to ask everyone, and especially you, someone who works directly with money and wealth. And it's how do you define success?
ooh, okay. I define success as it's not a destination, but it's the commitment that you make to yourself on a daily basis on the way to getting to where you want to be. Like if you were showing up for yourself, if you got up today and like you took your walk, you did a little bit of breath work, you tick something off the to-do list, like that to me, or you went to the gym, did some squats, like that to me is success. And I feel like so often we're hard on ourselves because success is like that end journey where like, okay, I saved the 50K emergency fund or I got the 10K month job or business. I have the relationship. I have like the banging bod. Like, how can you love yourself and celebrate yourself along every step of the way and not waiting until you get to yeah, this end point in
Yeah.
order to see yourself as successful. And then I would also say like for me, like, so my gap year that I took in 2022 was so hard because for so long I attached a lot of my self-worth to like my career and my work. And so when I took that year off intentionally, it was to like prove to myself that like I'm still valuable outside of my work, which was really hard. I think, yeah, like I mean, everyone's gonna decide on what success looks like to them. But I started to also realize like success isn't also just the external, but it's also how you feel. And so how you're also committing to how you feel on a daily basis and not abandoning that aspect of yourself.
Yeah. I love that answer so much. It's the journey. It sounds like if you're aligned in your journey, then you're successful. And that aligns with me and my beliefs so much. So I love hearing that from you, especially a woman who works so directly with money. The thing that people tie so much success to is, I'm making
Mm,
this much per year. Oh, I'm successful. Yes, it's a piece of
right.
it, but I don't think it's everything. And yeah, how we define it, I mean, it's so different for everyone. So I appreciate that. If there's anyone listening right now who they're wanting to transform their mindset around money, their relationship, their trauma of money, they're aware of maybe everything we just talked about, how can they reach you? How should they reach you? Look at all.
Yeah, sure. I actually want to touch on one more thing real quick. If you are someone that struggles with like how to, I think some people don't recognize that they're as successful as they are, or have a hard time seeing that they're not really where they want to be, and therefore like, they weren't successful and they're failures. A practice that I really love to do with my clients, with myself, is practice gratitude. Really like checking in with yourself, whether it's on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and really just giving thanks for like what you already have, what you've already done. So many times we like look at like the things that we don't have because society really focuses on that. Or like, you don't have this, you don't have that. But no, look at like what you do have. And I think it's really about perspective because there's always someone you're always looking at someone else like this person has it better. But then there's always someone else that like is looking at you and they're like, oh my God, I love Kelsey's life. Like she's living an amazing life. And you don't see it for yourself, right? So I think we're just all very hard on ourselves. Start with gratitude. And I think that's actually a great seed that could be planted for eventually nurturing and fostering like an abundant mindset. If you want to find me, I would definitely say head to my website, www.morganblackman.com. And my YouTube is also just my name. On my YouTube, you can also, or through my website, find my Substack, which is at the Wealth Letters. So THEWELLTH letters. I would say those are like the three places you can go. Yeah.
Amazing. And I'll be sure to add all of that in the show notes below. I love that final piece that you threw in. That is gold, like gratitude for what you have and not comparing your journey to anyone else's because you don't know what that person has put into themselves, how many years it's been, how much they've been through. Like we are all so different. So I love that. And I feel very grateful for this conversation. So thank you for sharing so much knowledge and wisdom, gold pieces left, right, and center. And we'll have to do this again. Thank you, Morgan.
Yes, yeah, anytime. Thanks for having me.